Ports of arcade games to home video game consoles are things that have been around for a very long time. Some of my earliest memories of this trend date all the way back to the Atari 2600 era when we would get home versions of games like Asteroids, Space Invaders, Breakout. Star Wars the arcade game is another one that kind of comes to mind. Gorf is another one that comes to mind. You could play arcade games at home. Now, granted, we did make some concessions in order to play these games at home because the power of home consoles was nowhere close to what we had in arcades at the time. But the idea of not having to pay quarters or go to arcades to play our favorite arcade games was mind-blowing. At least it was to me. And you're talking about someone who spent a ton of time in arcades whenever he had the ability, even if he didn't have any quarters to spend. I would just go down and look at the arcade games, watch other people play, and every so often when I had the money, I would pop the quarters into play. By the time we got to the NES era, which was after the great crash of '83, we saw this trend continue. Versions of games, of course, Super Mario Brothers was at home. We also got to play Ice Climber at home. We got to play Excite Bike at home. We also got to play arcade games from other companies. Pac-Man, Miss Pac-Man, Russian Attack, Gyrus was an option to play at home. The Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles arcade game via TMNT2, we got to play that at home. Arch Rivals is another example. The list goes on. Cabal is another one that I like to play quite a bit. The list goes on and on. Again, we were making some compromises, but these versions were obviously better than the versions that came before it on the Atari 2600. By the time we got to the 16-bit era, games like NBA Jam, for example, were making their way home and were even closer to the arcade and played just as smoothly, honestly. Then when we got to the PlayStation and N64 era, we started to get compilation discs from Namco, from Konami, from Williams. Those are the three that come to mind. We may even touch on a couple of those in a future episode. Then when we got to the sixth generation of consoles, and for the record, we're talking about the PlayStation 2, we're talking about the Dreamcast, we're talking about the Xbox, and we're talking about the GameCube. By the time we got to this particular generation of home consoles, we were making very few compromises. These were really close to the arcade originals, and if you were a fan of playing these games in arcades, you were losing very little in the trip home. The only thing you were losing was the big size of the cabinet, and for certain games, you were missing certain peripherals that would make the game close or just like the arcade. And this is going to be one of those cases where the games play like their arcade counterparts, but there's something significant that's missing that some fans really couldn't deal with being without. The PlayStation 2 came out in North America in the third quarter of 2000, right around September. Not long after the PlayStation 2 came out here in the US, Konami delivered a home version of Silent Scope for the PlayStation 2. There were also versions of this game for the Dreamcast, for the Xbox, and for the Game Boy Advance, which, from what I understand, is a really good version of the game, despite the fact it's on lesser hardware. Silent Scope in the arcades had a sniper rifle attachment. You'd actually be using the sniper rifle and the scope on the inside as its own video screen to zoom in on targets that were on the regular screen in front of you. Obviously, you were going for debilitating shots, whether they were headshots or heart shots, to be able to take the enemies down. Now, the PlayStation version of this, or PlayStation 2 version of this particular game, as well as the Dreamcast and GBA ports of this game, obviously don't come with any kind of sniper rifle compatibility. You are using your controller to move the sight around. You're using, for me at least, it's a trigger button on the PS2 or on the Dreamcast to open up your sight, and they're using the other trigger button to fire. Now, this is a mature-rated game. You can see it right down there for animated blood and violence. This is a game where you are shooting other human beings, and when we're talking about games that may be controversial, this is one of them. While it's not overtly violent, and the theme here is that you're shooting terrorists and that you're not just committing crazy acts of murder, it's still a game that rankled some folks outside of the video game industry and thought it was a little too violent, this and its sequels, which we'll get to a little bit later in this episode. So, when we look at the back of the case, maximum skill, maximum thrill. That's the tagline here. I don't know how I feel about that, but we'll read what it says on the back of the case. It says, "Get ready to experience the arcade hit on your PlayStation 2 computer entertainment system. The president and his family have been kidnapped by lethal terrorists. Boy, that's original. And the government turns to an elite counter-terrorist sniper to neutralize the hostile threats. Your mission is to infiltrate the terrorist headquarters, clear all areas of danger, and return the president's family safely to the White House. On-screen targeting system with magnifiable scope allows you to shoot with incredible precision. That is true. As I mentioned, when you press a certain button, your scope opens up and automatically magnifies on your particular target, so that works well. Exercise your sniping skills in downtown cities, freeways, and night vision missions. Also true. Features all of the modes from the original arcade, plus exclusive bonus modes, so you got some extra stuff when you played the home version of the game. Incredibly detailed graphics drawn straight from the arcade original. Again, it performs very close to the arcade original, minus the sniper rifle. And no special peripheral required to play. And this is where fans of the arcade game may struggle a little bit because you're not using the light gun. So you have to use the sticks in order to move, the analog sticks, I should say, in order to move your sight around. And some people just aren't up for that kind of thing. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to open this up. This is a brand new copy. There is the Silent Scope ID tag at the top. This game came out in late 2000, so we're talking about a game that's almost 20 years old now. We're going to go ahead and we're going to open this up, and we're going to see what's on the inside. There we go. I've been sitting on this one for a while. I actually found a really good deal on this on eBay, and then I decided I wanted to find the other two games and do an episode on the trilogy. Now, in arcades, there were just two, and we'll get to the second game shortly, but there was a third version made exclusively for the PS2, which by that point, the PS2 is running away with the console battle during that generation of consoles. When we open this up, I want to make sure the disc doesn't fall out. It's pretty plain. You do have the disc. I actually like the disc art, which has the sight on it. And, of course, we have our instruction manual, which we'll take out and we'll look at right now. The instruction manual is in full color, which is nice. Shows us the play controls here. And also talks about the story, if you're interested in that story. And we talked a little bit about that on the back of the case. We also do have a warranty card that you should turn in to be able to get some cool stuff from Konami of America. And on the back of the manual, we have ads for DDR and also for Gradius 3 and 4, a game I'd love to get sealed, but those are crazy expensive. So again, the idea here, you go through different stages. You have to pick off the snipers before they find you, or before the enemies find you and take you down. So obviously accuracy is very important, being able to fire quickly without making too many mistakes, because the more mistakes you make, the easier it is for enemies to locate you and shoot at you. There's also a timer that's consistently going, so you're battling not only enemies, but also the time on the clock as well. It is a tense experience. For me, it is a pretty enjoyable experience. It is an arcade game, however, so the replay value is bettering your performance time in and time out. For me, as an arcade fan, I don't mind playing and replaying games like this, but if you're looking for a deep 4 or 5 hour experience, this is not going to be the game for you. All right, so that is the first Silent Scope game. Now, the version, or the arcade game that I played more was the game's sequel, which is this guy right here. This is Silent Scope 2 Dark Silhouette. This game came out in 2001, so it only took a year for the sequel to arrive. Now, why this game sticks out to me is because I was working for a theme restaurant years after this game came out in like 2004. And they had Silent Scope 2 Dark Silhouette. They actually had the arcade game there, and I would play that a lot. I was playing that. I was playing NBA Showtime, and I was playing Daytona USA 2, and also the Star Wars Trilogy arcade game from Sega. But being able to play this game at home, once I was finally turned on to it, I really didn't get turned on to the Silent Scope games until I played this. So then I would go back and I would get the first Silent Scope game, and then I would get the next game we'll be talking about after this one. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Twice the skill, twice the thrill is what's promised on the back of the case here. Again, this is an M-rated game. The arcade smash hit Silent Scope 2 Dark Silhouette comes to PlayStation 2 computer entertainment system with twice the adrenaline-pumping action of the original with all-new two-player modes. I did not know that. Terrorists have stolen a poison gas missile and are about to unleash mass destruction on an unsuspecting country unless you and your partner can stop them. Take on exhilarating missions in majestic European environments ranging from downtown London to Swiss mountain ranges. With cooperative and competitive play, 2 players can take aim to see who is the best sniper. Again, I didn't know about the 2-player thing. I always played these games on my own, so that's kind of new. All new pulse-pounding simultaneous 2-player mode for cooperative or competitive play using the iLink cable, which is sold separately. That's something we haven't talked about on this show, being the iLink cable. Again, I'm more of a solo player, so I really didn't use that, but it's still cool that that exists. 4 exciting modes of play, including the story mode, shooting range, duel, and original. Exclusive new modes, options, and levels created only for the console version. So again, we're getting more bang for our buck here. It's not just a straight-up arcade experience, which is nice. Use innovative weapons, including the thermal vision scope and X-ray scope. Richly detailed graphics taken directly from the arcade version. That's one of the promises that we saw in the last game. Multiple branching paths that increase replay value. Of course, when you're talking about bringing an arcade game home, any way that you can enhance that game and make it more playable at home and longer, more enriching, is definitely a bonus for everybody all involved. So again, we'll just kind of show you some of the screens in the back of the case. I know it's kind of difficult because I'm actually filming this when it's still light outside, but it looks pretty good and it plays pretty well. So let's go ahead and open this up and let's see what we have on the inside. So I'll do this with my left hand so you can actually see me do it. There we go. So open that up and we'll open this up. There we go. Uh-oh. There we go. All right. This also has the seal at the top, so that's nice. Silent Scope 2. Wow, this was 2001. I didn't realize that game came out so soon after the first. So we'll take that off. And when we open up the case, thankfully the disc doesn't come out. That's good. This has been kicking around somewhere for a while. I'm a little nervous about this one. It doesn't look like it was sealed again, but maybe it was. If you look on the inside here, there's like some residue where the game is. Maybe I should look at the disc, huh? I got this from Amazon, by the way. This looks like it might have been water damaged. I don't know. We'll see. It'll probably still play. I'm probably just nervous over nothing. And then we'll take the manual out, and the manual, again, is full color. So we're 2 for 2. So here's the manual right here. Silent Hill 2 is what's being advertised in the back. Silent Hill, I've never played these, by the way. I know, it's going to get some booing, I'm sure. So you can also use your mouse, by the way. If you have a USB mouse, you can use the mouse to play that. That's pretty neat. I didn't know that. And again, just like the original, we have a story. We have the screen layout. We have play controls listed. You can play through the arcade mode of the game if that is what you're after. There are different options here as well, ranking, save and load, things like that. Unfortunately, while you can save this to a memory card, without any kind of online capability, you can't compare your results against other players. So only people who play locally can register their names on the leaderboard. What's interesting here is it's no longer presidential. It's now taking place overseas. So that adds a different twist to things. But at the same time, it's still the general basic idea. You have to shoot the enemies before they detect you, so you have to be accurate. You have to also be up against the clock, so you can't make too many mistakes. And there are a certain number of continues, by the way, if I remember right. So if you use all those, you can't finish the game. I don't remember whether I played this all the way through or not. I think I did, but you know, my memory's going in my old age. So that is Silent Scope 2 Dark Silhouette. I'll have to let you guys know, maybe on Facebook, I'll let you know whether this game works. But I thought it was in pretty good shape when I got it. We'll see. I think this came from Puerto Rico. So I think that was pretty interesting as well. Usually a lot of the games I get are in the contiguous 48, so this is new. We have one more game to go through, and it is Silent Scope 3, a game that was created exclusively for the PlayStation 2, I believe. That's this guy right here. Silent Scope 3. Boy, he looks like he's ready to kill somebody, doesn't he? Silence the Enemy is what's being talked about on the back. There's our list of features and things as well. The thing I'm worried about here, and again, I got this from Amazon as well. It looks like this might have been opened already. You can see, well, maybe you can't in this, but it has been sliced down the middle. So we'll see whether this has been opened or not. Let's see. Silence the Enemy, it says here. Silent Scope's intense sniping action returns for a third round in an all-new game for the PS2 computer entertainment system. As the world's best sniper, prevent a terrorist organization, again, sensing a theme here, from using cloning technology for global domination, featuring expansive levels and diabolic bosses. It's time to silence the enemy threat. Silent Scope 3 delivers twice the gameplay by including the hit arcade game Silent Scope EX. Okay, so that's the arcade game that's on here, and then Silent Scope 3 has its own unique story. Yep, an all-new original game and the hit arcade game Silent Scope EX. You're really getting 2 games for the price of 1, although the EX game is an arcade game, so it's going to have the limitations that come with that. Incorporates 3D sound technology to help find and target enemies. That's kind of neat. High replay value with multiple endings and routes. Unlock hidden stages and modes. This uses 3D phonic sound technology from Victor Company in Japan, from JVC. That I did not know either. So let's go ahead and open this one up and see what we have on the inside here. There we go. I actually came prepared this time. Of course, now I have to try and get these open without it taking forever. There we go. Yeah, another super-sized episode. They say that YouTube loves longer videos. I hope that you guys don't mind. All right, there's that. I don't think it's going to matter because I think I can still open it. All right, let's go ahead and do that. So when we open the case, I want to make sure the disc doesn't pop out. It does not. And this is what we have on the inside. We have Silent Scope 3, and we have the disc art there. I'm just going to take a look at the disc and make sure the disc is in good shape. Yeah, this might not have been opened. This is in better shape than 2. Let's take a look at the manual for Silent Scope 3. And when we do, again, the manual is in color. So we're talking 3 for 3 in terms of color manuals. Boy, do I miss these. There's an ad for Contra Shattered Soldier on the back here. Coming soon. That's pretty exciting. When we open this up, there are guides for Silent Scope EX, which is here, and also for Silent Scope 3, which is the original game as well. Let's see what they give a story for EX. Let's see. No, not really. They don't tell us a lot. Oh, there it is. No, the story unfolds as you clear the missions you have been assigned. The game is over when your life becomes 0. That's pretty much all you get. There's a shooting range as part of EX as well, but when you get to Silent Scope 3, that's where the story that I read you from the back of the case takes place. So that's neat. What else we got going on here? A bunch of different options. Again, limited continues here. EX options, which change based on how many times you play, so that's kind of cool. And talks about the different characters, including the very popular player character, as well as partner and Cap. Boy, I hope that Marvel doesn't get upset over that. Different place settings as well, talking about the EX staff and then the Silent Scope 3 staff. So again, that's kind of neat that there are 2 full games on one disc. What's interesting about the Silent Scope games is that they all are on CD-based media. They are on CD-ROMs, that blue-backed kind of discs. So if your PS2 doesn't play those or struggles with those, keep that in mind before you pick up any or all of these games for yourself. Again, my experience with these games really goes back to the theme restaurant, Kahunaville, that I used to work at. I was a DJ there. And I got better the more that I played. And once I started to get into the game, that's when I wanted to play the home versions, which I would wind up getting eventually. And the games do play just like their arcade counterparts if you're okay with moving the sight around with your controller instead of using the rifle. For me, that's okay. For you, it may not be, especially if you enjoyed playing the games in the arcade. But when we break it down to brass tacks, when we talk about how the games perform in terms of how close they look and sound to their arcade counterparts, they are very close, almost identical. And when you're not losing that much from arcade to home, that kind of conversion, I think you're coming out ahead. Keep in mind, however, that the Silent Scope games, as I mentioned, are M-rated, so if you are not quite 17 or if you have issues with video game violence, these may not be for you. But the blood isn't over the top. The violence is medium, I would say, and it's just the act of live gun violence that may put people off. So consider these things before you decide to add these games to your collection. As always, I thank you for checking out this episode of Unsealed, which is now going almost 20 minutes. I guess that means I should kind of cut it here. And until the next episode, my friends, take care of yourselves and each other, and we'll see you next time.